Hi, the plugin you're looking at is called Melda Production Mic Simulator, MMicSim. It's quite a simple idea. From the list on the left, you choose the microphone you're using. In this case, it's an SE7 small diaphragm condenser. And on the right, you can choose the microphone that you would like it to sound like, or at least that's the theory. This isn't going to be a comparison, it's just to give you an idea how much MMicSim changes the sound of the original mic, for better or for worse, depending on which of the simulations you've chosen. My understanding is that the microphones were recorded in an anechoic chamber, which in itself isn't quite realistic, because when I made the recording with the SE7, it was also capturing reflections from the room, so it wasn't just the front of the capsule, it was all around. And it's the same with all the other mic. In a chamber, there won't be any reflection, so it's not going to allow for that. So it can't be perfect, but my view was that I think it cost around about £16, so that would be less than $20, I expect, if you're in the States. And for that much, it might be useful as an easy way of dialing in a different sound rather than reaching for an EQ. So here we go. Let's disable the plugin first of all. I should say this is a recording of a guitar, and I've got some other stuff here, such as a compressor, and a little bit of reverb, and a limiter, and a bit of EQ. MMicSim sits on the raw sound, so all that's added on afterwards, just to make it sound a little bit more palatable. So here we go, this is the raw sound. The raw sound. Let's enable the plugin. Well, in fact, let's not enable the plugin. Let's choose a microphone we think we might want to use rather than the SE7. So let's go for an AKG C414. I've never heard one of these. Don't have one, so I can't comment on the accuracy, but let's see what that does to the sound. So we'll start off with the plugin disabled, then we'll enable it, and then we'll use this feature on Reaper, which is Delta Solo, which allows us to listen to the difference between the sound before the plugin and the sound after the plugin. So you can hear what the plugin's adding or taking away. Okay, so let's start with the plugin disabled. So I think you can hear the plugin's doing quite a lot to the sound, although to my ears it's not that noticeable maybe when the sound's being played. And I think having the reverb on and the other plugins is probably just more representative of how you might use this anyway. You probably wouldn't use the raw microphone sound. Let's try another mic. Let's try, I don't know, an Avantone CV12. I imagine that's a valve microphone. So once again, plugin disabled, we'll enable it and then listen to the difference between the input and the output. Here we go. That's making quite a lot of difference. Not sure I'd like it any better than the original, but you can hear that the plugin's doing something there, something interesting. Let's have another look and see what else we can pick. How about a DPA? Same again, plugin disabled, then enabled, and then Delta Solo. Once again, probably quite subtle. Would be nice to have a comparison, but I think I'll do that later on with maybe with voice, I think, rather than the guitar. Let's just try one more, or a couple more. Here's one. Neumann KM84. That's a classic, isn't it? I don't have one of those either. So, plug-in disabled, etc. Seems to be adding a little bit of body to the sound, if I can use that word. I quite like that. I might use that, I think, rather than the original. Let's try something else. How about a Neumann U87? They're quite expensive, aren't they? Here we go again. Lots more microphones to play with. I suppose it might be interesting to pick an SE7. So let's just go straight to Delta Solo with this. That's more like it. Can't hear much. There's a little bit there, so something's going on between the two. But that's enough of that. One thing I haven't explored, you've got controls at the top. You've got dry, wet. It's at 100% because why not? Output, and this thing called smoothness. I'm not quite sure what smoothness does, so I'm going to choose the KM84 again because I quite like that. And we'll listen to the KM84 and alter the smoothness, and then we'll see if we can hear any difference, and then I'll enable Delta Solo so that the difference becomes more obvious. So let's whack the smoothness up. Delta Solo. No smoothness. %, smoothness. Can you hear the difference? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I can hear any difference. Let's put it back down to 20. I'm sure there is a difference. I'm sure it's doing something. It's just not completely obvious to me. That's it. That's MMicSim. Download a demo if you're interested and have a play around with it. I'm not sure how useful this has been, apart from it proves that it does alter the sound a bit depending on which microphone you've got selected. Whether it actually sounds like that microphone or not is a completely different question. I'm not sure that bothers me too much. What I got this for is just dialing in some EQ very quickly rather than playing around with an EQ on my own, which I sometimes find is a little bit confusing. I can't get the sound I want. So this at least gives me something to play with. I think, there are a few microphone models there I could try, and hopefully in the future they might expand that list or something like that. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Is this useful at all, or should you just use an EQ and learn how to use that and get the sound you want from there? I don't know, but thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.